high school chums and business chums and Ruritan members and the like. She has insisted on her rights under the Constitution and fought a battle that really is an example of, to you, my listener, of how battles are to be fought. They're to be fought aware that you are by yourself, and that's what happens whenever you stand up for your rights. You are purely by yourself. There's no one else there, and you'll have that sense often in pursuing your argument and your rights. You'll have that sense that there's no one in the world who cares about you. No one is there supporting you. It's just you against a foe who, in the scenario that I'm thinking of here, of course, is a government agency of some kind, whether a city government or a branch or an enforcer or a collector or some kind of bean counter or timekeeper who is on the payroll, afraid really of doing the wrong thing, but thinking, well, I've got to do this now. And my job description calls for me to go out and harass this person, dunning this person for something or other. Carol Gaddy is the person who was being done for more than 2 years in Dunlap, and the ground she stood on was the sum of all the grounds that people can stand on as they look at the claim of the modern prehensile claw-like state, which is there to take your last dollar from you if you would just let it. And that ground is probable cause or warrant. And here's why her story is so interesting. And her hearing this morning that Steve Greer was a part of was just an advantageous wrinkle. I would say it was all in her advantage this morning at an administrative hearing from an official, a judge from the Secretary of State's office. You might say the Secretary of State, who is an administrative law judge, and the name of the man who was sent from Nashville was Steve Darnell, who operates under the UAPA, the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act, and a new law which favors the homeowner and seems to disfavor municipal corporations, especially when they do their wild things now or back in 1973, I think it is, where the annexation at issue was ostensibly, pretendedly passed by the city. Carol says it wasn't passed and that she's not in the city. So you have this huge fight that began with the mayor saying, we want to inspect your house. And it's a ramshackle house. It's falling down. And it's a danger to the public. And that was Mayor Land's position 2.5, I guess about 3 years ago now, based on an inspection from the edge of the lot on a bend in the creek called Coops Creek, south of City Hall, about a carbine shot away from City Hall. I say carbine shot because it's further than a pistol would hit anything probably, but not so far that you need a rifle like an M1 Garand to hit it. Okay, it's not that far off. So it's a carbine shot away from City Hall, south. And Carol Gaddy and her husband Thomas are arguing by their questions to an old surveyor and former property assessor, Ivan Condra, Mr. Condra, 84 years old, who came with no papers and a lot of memories, some of them kind of vague, testifying for more than an hour this morning in Dunlap. And to get back to the main idea, because this is David Toulis here at 927, and the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. Yeah, 800-8949. And the principle is this: a city government is effectively impotent unless it has probable cause or a warrant. Now, I'm not saying impotent in every respect, but impotent when it touches on your personal rights. Your rights come to you because God made you in his image. Okay, if that's the first reason you have rights, those are called unalienable rights. They're rights that you can't traffic or trade away. The rights that in a lesser category of rights that are somewhat like unalienable rights are called inalienable rights. Okay, there's a distinction there. The inalienable ones, by legal definition, are trafficable. You can trade them. People can buy them from you so that you don't assert them. Okay, those are negotiable rights. But the rights that God gave you, because you're made in his image, right? You're an image bearer of God. those cannot be traded away. So those are rights that are, you might say, God-given and unalienable. And you could say further, in two more points here on the David Tilley Show, that they are inherent. Okay, they're inherent in you. And then what's the fourth one? I'm not remembering offhand what the fourth one is, but they are, and they belong to you, and they're not, they cannot be overridden. Okay, they cannot be overridden by let's say administrative necessity or mayoral necessity or some kind of quote necessity unquote that comes from either an organ of government or some bureau that is there to enforce some edict or make some claim against the people, right? Because that's what the modern state does. The modern state is effectively at war with its own people, and that's because the modern state has rejected God entirely, and we don't have Romans 13 government. We have a Revelation 13 government. The hair-raising chapter from St. John that has a frightening analysis of pretentious, ridiculous modern government with its hand in everything and an a priori claim to all things, right? To all existence, to all life, even marriage itself, claimed by government, by the civil authority. And you know, I want you to know this. This is David Toulis, and we're at 800-8949. We are a pro-government station. I want you to know that I am more pro-government than probably most people in Chattanooga. And when I say pro-government, what I mean is I want there to be government. I believe there has to be a civil magistrate. And he has to be obedient, A, to God, and then B, to his own written law, right? And that's what my whole transportation project is all about, getting the state government and Mayor Andy Burke and Brent Lambert here in East Ridge and Gary Llewellyn in Dayton, Tennessee, and Sheriff Jim Hammond of Hamilton County to respect and obey the law as it's written, even though there may be permissions by courts. The Constitution, in fact, controls, and the statute, in fact, controls, and so therefore we have to have these bodies that are using threat, force, and coercion and blue lights to oppress people, starting with the poor. Right? I don't want to be oppressed by police, and neither do you. But the ones we have to think about first are the poor who cannot handle the interruption of liberty and freedom that you can, right? You can handle a traffic ticket. A poor person who already has a revoked license because he has unpaid court debt, he simply cannot handle it. And I'm thinking of Tiffany McGuinn. I'm thinking of people like Christina Wright here in East Ridge who are the defendants in the court, right? They're dragged before Judge Chris Helton over and over again because they can't pay and they don't have their licenses. They can't get their licenses and they're too poor to get the money to pay the fines and the fees and so on. Tiffany has $14,000 in fines. And you should hear the lamentation in her voice when she talks to me about that. It's lamentation, and all you can do is pray for her and ask God to bring her relief, right? And that's what I want to do, is bring relief. Now, being pro-government means that I want the law. I accept that there's a law, but all right, let's read it, okay? First of all, let's read it, and then let's see, does it apply here? Does it apply there? Or maybe, as Sheriff Hammond says, he doesn't say this, he acts it out, that it applies everywhere. So I would say, well, no, hold it. It doesn't apply to A and B, but it does apply to C and D. And so what I'm doing is I'm pro-government. I want the government to be properly applied. I want to be the civil force, the lawful threat of the officer to be correctly applied at 800-8949-800-8949. So Mrs. Gaddy, getting back to Mrs. Gaddy in Dunlap and the hearing this morning, she said, no, there is no administrative necessity that requires me to let you on my property to search it for any reason, period. And she was right. She was absolutely right. And the story was not covered by the local press in Sequatchie County. It was not covered by the Chattanooga press, except I think, though, TV3 or maybe TV9 had one report on it at the beginning, and that's when I found out about it. And I've probably written 30 stories about this woman who defied her legal and political establishment and said no, N-O. And I like the word N-O, and I think a lot of people, probably not you, the listener, but you probably know people who misspell that simple word. They spell it O-N. And I shake my head. I said, come on, get the spelling right. I am the editor, after all, the editor of Nuganomics.com. And so spelling errors really bother me. And I admit I make them in text messages, talk to text. I sometimes make silly statements because of misspellings. But it's not ON. It's not get on, come on, get along. No, it's NO, no. And that's what happens to a free person. A free man says, no, I'm not yielding. I'm not giving my ground. I'm not answering questions. I'm not going to let you search my trunk of my car. No, you're not coming in my house. Get off my property. He's being mean. Yeah, he's being mean. He's not being very kind. What did Sunday school teacher say if he heard about this man telling an important official to get off his property? My, that's very rude. Well, it is rude, but when someone's challenging your God-given rights that God gave you, right, that are inherent in you, you have no business trafficking in them and consenting. Because when you consent, you don't have the right. So rights do not exist. They are not, as June Griffin so smartly says, they're not self-exercising. They have to be exercised by you, the man there in the store, the man who's getting into his car, and suddenly a cop comes up and demands to see your driver's license. You're in a parking lot, in a private lot, at the 7-Eleven with your pack of beer and your Twinkies, and he thinks you're somebody else, and he wants you to identify yourself. Well, no, that's not good enough. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna say no. Well, no, I'm not talking to you. Get away from me. I'm not answering your questions. You don't have probable cause to stop me, and I'm not telling you anything. You, my listener, I want you to think about this, okay? I want you to think about being that person, because when that happens to you, I want you to think, well, I represent people in saying no. I represent people. Mrs. Gaddy is a heroine to me because she represents the whole ethic of free people, of free American people. The number is 800-8949 if you want to give me a call. Do drop a line here if you want. She represents the whole idea of being free. After all, that was why the Civil War was fought, right? Was it not fought to free the slaves? And are we going to be enslaved now by the same power that won that war? Is that it? Well, a lot of people think that we have no choice. We just have to comply. We need to go along to get along. I've had Christian men tell me that, the Ten Commandments really require absolute submission at every point. And it doesn't require that. Romans 13 does not require that. Romans 13 is the most abused passage in the scripture from the modern pulpit. And the Christian ministers in our city, here in Chattanooga, I would like to suggest to you, are responsible for the apathy that we have about these abuses by the law of lawful people and innocent and harmless people going about their innocent daily activities, not hurting anyone, committing no tort to anyone. That is the situation we have. And that's why City Council needs to hear from you, my one listener. Look, if you go to the City Council tonight because I'm asking you to do that, you'll be there and I'll be there. So it'll just be the two of us, just you and me. I will be there by God's good grace, right? Unless I have to go home for a problem. If my mother falls down or something like that, I won't be there, but I plan to be there. And you, my listener, it'll be you and it'll be me, right? You, David Toulis, listener, and David Toulis, and then there'll be some others. I think Marie Mott will be there. She is a terrific host here on our station, Marie Mott. Marie Mott, in my phone, she's called Marie Mott Activist. So whenever I mention her in a text message to somebody else, it always pops up Marie Mott Activist. So she's going to be there. Tiffany Rankins will be there. So that'll be four of us. And I'm there to report. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just there to report on things. And but you, my listener, you can take a minute or two of your time, do something different. Go to City Council because you've never been there. Do you know where it is? It's on 600 Lindsay Street. It's just on the back side of the City Hall. If you're facing City Hall, the warehouse row is behind you on the left. Immediately behind you is this anonymous building where you have the city attorney's office, and then straight in front is City Hall. If you go left, straight ahead on the left side, that's the City Hall building, or the City Council building is back there on Lindsay Street. So it's a very nice, beautiful little bit of street there. Just a lovely, lovely street. I love just sitting there and just kind of, if I just had time to sit, I would just sit and enjoy the shade and the beautiful way those trees arc over the sidewalk. It's a very pleasant little restful place to be. But when you show up tonight, I want it not to be restful. I want you to be of restless spirit, because that's what I have. I have a restless spirit. I'm bothered by what I see in Chattanooga, and I think it's what we're seeing in Chattanooga is beneath you, and beneath me as well. And I live in Chattanooga, but I have a business not in Chattanooga, but still, we are Nooga Radio, and we have an interest in. Though I do own property in Chattanooga. I must say, through a trust my mother has, I'm a property owner as the beneficiary of a lot in Chattanooga. So I have an indirect claim to the right to speak. Perhaps if I'm challenged, I would. If Carol Burrs had a bad moment and challenged me in my right to speak, I'd say, "Well, ma'am, my mother has a piece of property in trust of which I'm the beneficiary, and it's up at Stonehenge near where is that? Near Ottawa, near Collegedale." And so you could say I have legal standing. I think about these things, right? But Chattanooga is my town. Okay, I'm Dr. Nooga centric. David Toole is here on Nooga Radio. Chattanooga belongs to me, and so I have the sense that in belonging to me, I've got to make it right. Just like I have to make things right at my house with mowing and fixing the roof and making repairs, things like that. Those are for me to care about, because that's my property. And you, my listener, you live in Chattanooga, you have a sense of property, a sense of propriety too. Propriety is simply the sense of ownership, right? The cops we are complaining about have a view like the slave master in the Old South upon the slave, where his command is a lawful command, and that's it. It is executive and proprietary. The word proprietary in that sense is describing of ownership. The cop owns you. You are his subject, and you are effectively no more free than the slave in the old field there by the ditch, where the slave gang with the long bags that trail after them with the cotton stuffed in them are wending their way up the field past the ditch over toward the trees. And the slave master, the warden, you might say, is there making sure that no one is lollygagging too much. Of course, some lollygagging is allowed back in slave days, but the warden wants to make sure that the work is done before lunch. And that sense of ownership is what the cops have. And they have it by tradition, okay? It's a tradition that cops have that. They are a different people than we are. They are elite. They have power and you have no power. And therefore, they're right? If you have power in our day, in which Christianity seems largely rejected, and we have what's called power religion. The power religion concept is that the powerful are virtuous and right and true. Look at Mrs. Clinton, how she's escaped innumerable indictments because she's powerful, right? Her foundation and she are powerful. Cops are powerful. They have legal immunities that you don't have. The color of their uniform gives them legal immunity to kill people, right? They can kill people who have not done any crime, committed any sin worthy of capital punishment, and yet the person can be killed. He's executed. We have cases like that dozens and dozens of times every year. 1,200 people shot dead by cops every year, just about. And so we have a class of people who are above the rest. Can we bring them back to us? Can we bring them back into our bosom is my question. Murray Mott suggests that policemen wear suits and not wear uniforms. And if they have a gun on them, let it be hidden under the jacket, right? Under a concealed carry permit, perhaps, but not the military style, deathly powerful looking officers that we have with their armor plate and their grimaces. And now lately, beards and tattoos. I mean, the tattoos are really, really striking in my mind. Officer Wright apparently has them, and they show up in the two scandal videos. One of the videos having a dueling police video offered as counterfire. 3 videos. These are men better than us. Can we bring them back to us? Can we make cops more like us? Can we bring them back into the soul of the city rather than above it, looking down upon it like sharp-beaked birds, right? Looking whom they may devour on the side of the street. Yes, they serve a peacekeeping function, and we have Sheriff Jim Hammond and his deputies to thank for the real authority there. The sheriff has the real authority to keep the peace, and there is warrant for there to be police officers under our statutes, and there is, as Sheriff Hammond says, there is a kind of professional courtesy that he extends to David Roddy to allow him to do what he does. Okay, that's fine. Let that be the case. But let there be a civilizing of this branch serving Mayor Andy Burr. Will Mayor Andy Burr, I wonder, take heed of your presence tonight? Will you be there at the city council tonight? Or will it just be me and Tiffany Rankins and Marie Mott? David Tullis, Nigger Radio 92.7.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
More details after a body was found in a dumpster in Chattanooga. The body was confirmed to belong to 60-year-old Robert